What's up, everyone? David Seven Skies here, broadcasting from the Seven Skies Mansion. Today, it's a very, very exciting day for me because finally, after years and years and years of searching on the web and never find what I was actually looking for, I decided to do it myself. If you follow my adventures on Instagram, you might know that last week I bought myself a pretty cool thing, which is a real and pretty expensive SSL compressor. So for years, I've been trying to find an A-B comparison between the real thing and plugins, and I've never been able to find something that was actually useful for me. I mean, obviously there's a ton of blog posts of people posting their SSL and the plugin, and there's a ton of video of people testing the SSL and the plugins. But the thing is, it's mostly like drums and rock and roll stuff or pop stuff, but there was never really something dance music or EDM oriented. And so because, let's face it, I'm awesome, I decided to do it myself. And not just that, to make it super professional, I decided to do it on the song that I just released with Tiesto, which is called Trouble. So what I'm gonna do is, I'm not gonna really go into like the settings and how I did it and blah, 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 blah. If you wanna know more about it, I wrote an article on standalone-music.com, and if you want to check it out, it's going to be down there somewhere in the description. So what this is going to be is the setting is already done. I mean, I'll explain a little bit of the concept behind it, but I'm just going to run it through the real SSL and then A/B to the glue, the UAD SSL, the Waves SSL, and that's about it. I mean, there's obviously a bunch of SSL stuff, but these are kind of like the three more common ones, and so these are the ones that I'm gonna test. So before I start, let's get one thing out of the way because I'm sure people are gonna ask for it. Yes, this chair is awesome. No, this is not my studio chair. This chair is pretty comfy. It's awesome when you're reading a book or when you're playing with the Switch, but this is definitely not the chair where I produce. It just looks really cool for YouTube, and so I use it. It's definitely not comfy because I am super low, as you can see. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to do this, and so I'm probably going to struggle during the whole video. So now that that's out of the way, let's jump into the session, and let's try the SSL. Okay, so here is the SSL in all of its beauty. So as you can see, this is an X-Rec super analog module. It's still modeled after the G Bus Compressor, this like the super famous one. And the only difference is this is kind of like a 500 module, but it's SSL own sort of device. This little box here, it's called the Minx, and yeah, this is like a cheap version of something bigger that they have. And yeah, this is a pretty expensive, not insanely expensive, but a pretty expensive compressor. And it sounds exactly the same as the famous G Bus compressor that it's in all of their huge, amazing consoles. And let's take a quick look at the settings. This settings is pretty much the same setting that you'll see on the plugins as well. And this is a very, very common settings for mastering. So we have an attack of 10 milliseconds, then a fast release. The real, like the expert and the SSL lover tend to use it in auto. I normally don't like that, maybe because I'm a beginner. They said that it's a very beginner kind of thing to not like the auto settings. I think it's a little bit too slow on dance music, so I tend to like it at either 1 or 2, sometimes even 3. The reason is it bounces very well with the kick. So the whole thing with the release, I'm not gonna really go into detail. Again, I wrote an article. If you want to read it, I'm gonna leave the link down below. But basically, you want the release to catch up with the beat of your song. If it's too slow, you're gonna get a song that it's not really flowing, and you're gonna get this like kind of choppy flow, and that's potentially very harmful for your mix. Now the ratio is at 4. A lot of people use it at 2. I like the ratio at 4 to be a little bit more present, and you'll see when I start the song, I'm gonna get about 3 to 4 dB compression. You'll see that the needle hardly hit the 4, and that's kind of what you want to have on a compression. It's still pretty heavy, but you can get away with it. I would normally not go over 4, especially when I'm doing the mastering, but every song is different. But for this particular song, you'll see that the 4 works pretty well. Okay, so this is our session. This is the treble mix session, and as you can see, I have my 3 SSL plugins open. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna run it through the SSL, and then we're gonna run it through the glue, and we're gonna compare the two. Then again SSL, and then run it through the UAD, then SSL, and run it through the waves. Here I have my external instrument. Let's turn it on and let's start a song. Obviously, I'm going to start the song on the loudest part, which is the drop, so you can hear what's going on. And I'm going to start with the SSL turned off. And let's go. So you can hear immediately after I turn it on, the song starts slapping like crazy. You can hear obviously the famous glue effect of the SSL. So everything that's sort of in the background kind of gets brought up to the same level as the kick. But the way it's done, it's done in a very, very nice way. The song kind of becomes more glued together, and what I like the most about this compressor is actually the slap, the transient that you get. If you pay attention to the kick when I bypass it and when I engage it, if you pay attention to the transient of the kick, you'll be amazed. So let me play it again. So you can hear, as soon as I turn it on, it's basically like someone just like got in the room and mixed the song differently. This is insane. You can get pretty much the same result with all these other compressors. Obviously, there is a difference. So what I'm gonna try and do here is try to figure out whether it's worth to spend $2,000 on the real thing, or if you can get away with $150 and just buy the plugin. Okay, so now let's run the song through the glue, and then you'll see me switch from here, SSL to the glue. Okay, so if you are not super trained, you might think that they sound exactly the same. Once again, you have to pay attention, especially at the transient and the way the kick interact with the whole song. The glue sounds really, really good. You still get a nice transient out of it. But the thing with the SSL is somehow it isolates the kick and those like low mids frequencies, and everything kind of gets his own space. It's incredible. It creates this kind of space between the elements. The glue sort of does that, but I feel like it creates a little bit of mess in the mids frequency while the SSL sort of clean that part up. Also, the glue tends to be a little bit more boomy compared to the SSL. But let's go to the busiest part of the song and let's try it there. So you can also kind of pay attention to the hi-hats and all the drums that come in and how they interact with the different compressors. So let's start again. This is the real SSL. Even in this case, I feel like the real SSL sounds a little bit smoother in the high frequencies. It's not a crazy difference. I would say the difference is still more focused on the lows and low mids, especially that kick. It's insane how much space you get with the real one. But yeah, there is a little bit of difference. Probably also the fact that it's an analog gear, so you get this like nice and smooth tone out of the highs, while with the glue you get this harshness that is not like super annoying, to be honest. I really don't hear this crazy difference in the highs. Overall, the glue sounds really good. The transients are really nice. I still think the SSL slaps way more. But yes, this is it for the glue versus the SSL. Now let's try to compare the UAD with the real SSL. Once again, let's start with the real SSL. Okay, wow. So this is super surprising to me because I have so much faith in UAD stuff. But in my opinion, the UAD SSL just doesn't even come close to the real thing. It's definitely darker. This is something some people like better than others. Some people prefer brighter tones. Some people like darker tones. I, to be honest, prefer brighter tones. But that aside, I feel like the UAD cannot keep up with the transients. The song starts to be very messy, especially compared to the glue. I mean, if you compare how the glue was keeping up with the transients, it was very similar to the real SSL. The UAD, surprisingly, it's not keeping up with the transients at all. Let's try it again. You can hear the UAD gets the kick right at some point, and then it loses it for a couple seconds, and then it gets another one right, and then it loses it, and then it gets it right. I don't know. I'm honestly shocked. This might have been modeled after something different. Obviously, every hardware is different. You know, if you buy this one and I buy another one and I put them together, they will sound slightly different. So it obviously always comes down to the machine they modeled it after. But the transients here just don't cut through. The SSL just doesn't, the UAD, I don't know, in my opinion, just doesn't catch the transients right. So this is definitely another win for the real SSL. And if I have to compare the UAD with the glue, I would definitely go with the glue. Then again, it might work. The UAD might work better with other elements, maybe with the drums, maybe with a pop mix or a rock mix. But in a dance music environment, this is what it's all about today, guys. In a dance music environment, I would definitely not use it on the master. Okay, so the last one is the Waves SSL compressor against the real SSL compressor. So once again, let's play the song first through the SSL and then through the Waves. Okay, the waves is actually reacting pretty well. In my opinion, sometimes I feel like I can hear the compression being a little bit too hard compared to the real machine. The real machine has this thing that just sounds very smooth, very natural. It adds a lot of punch, but it somehow keeps everything sounding very natural. The waves, I can hear that slap. It's very similar. I still feel like the real machine, compared to all the plugins that we tried, lets some of the mids and highs through, especially with the kicks, and it adds this like beautiful harmonics in the kick, and it just gets this like very pointy transient, and the plugins don't even come close to that. But the waves, I like it for the most part. In some cases, like I said, I feel like you can hear the compressor working too much, and you don't get that with the real machine. So I would say the biggest difference, it's especially in those like high mids where you get the transient, and the space that it creates around the low mids. I feel like none of the plugins actually get close to that. You don't get that space. All you get is like this sort of muddiness. The yaw sounds pretty good, but I feel, especially if you have a sub, you can hear it. It all just like kind of rumbles there, and it's tricky because on speakers, on normal speaker or in the car, this might be sort of like exciting. So you hear more bass, you hear more rumble, and you're like, oh my God, this is awesome. But then when you go in the club, that rumbles becomes a giant mess. While I feel the SSL just gives the right amount of bass and the right amount of energy in the low frequencies, but it keeps it super tight. And then when you play it in huge speakers, huge systems, everything just punches through, and it has its own space, and it just sounds awesome in my opinion. But to end this video, let's talk about whether it's worth it or not to spend over $2,000 on a real SSL, or if you can just spend $150 and buy either the glue or the waves or the UAD. So in my opinion, I would say you don't need to spend $2,000. I mean, I'm super excited and super happy that I bought the real SSL. I would say you probably need more and more listening to be able to properly judge the differences. But I would say the SSL sounds awesome, sounds better than the plugins. But if you would give me a song that's been mastered with a glue or the UAD or whatever, and tell me that that's being done through a real SSL, I most likely wouldn't be able to tell you whether it's true or not. Maybe the UAD, since now I know how it doesn't really catch up with the transient, maybe I could be able to spot that one. Maybe the waves, I would be able to tell, this is too strong, this is too much of a compressor. It might be a plugin. The glue, I honestly would have huge problems being able to tell whether if it's the real thing or not. If I A/B the two compressor, the real one and the plugin, I can tell that there's that space and I can tell all that fancy stuff. If you give me a mix and I can't A/B it, it's gonna be probably impossible, to me at least. Maybe to some super engineer, it's gonna be super obvious. To me, and probably to most of you guys, it's gonna be very hard to tell whether it's a real SSL or a plugin. Now, why did I spend that much money on a real thing then? I mean, you guys know that I work with like very big producers and I do very big projects. So to me, to be able to deliver higher standards and higher quality mixes and mastering does make the difference. It's not extremely necessary, but at least they can say, hey, I have a real SSL, let's run it through the real SSL. And people get excited. I I get excited. I've had this thing for a week, and I've already had like a bunch of my friends sending me their mixes, and I just ran it through the SSL because it's the real thing. But you know that I travel a lot, and obviously I cannot bring the SSL with me. So I would say after a week or 10 days of testing, the SSL wins over everything. And if I'm not going to be able to have my SSL with me because I'm traveling, my choice would definitely be the glue. So this doesn't mean that the glue is better than the UAD or the waves. To me, for what I do, for the way I do it, and for the way I like the bus compressor to react, the glue is what came closer to the real thing. So guys, this is it. I am really curious to hear what you think about this comparison. I am really curious to know which one you like better, if you can tell the difference, if you like the glue better than the real thing, or the UAD better than the real thing, or the waves better than the real things, or whatever. Please let me know in the comments down below. And especially I hope this clarified the differences between the real thing and the plugins, and it will hopefully help you pick the next compressor for your mix. Let me know everything in the comments down below. I'm super excited about this video. I really hope you liked it. And for me, David, Seven Skies, I'll see you next time. Bye bye.